Oh, hey, we're live. What's up, wrestling fans? I'm Dynamite Doug.
I'm Kevin.
Hey, and this is the True Bros Wrestling Show. Did I say just True Bros?
I don't know what you said.
We are True Bros.
It's the Two Bros Wrestling Show, Doug. If it was something else that you intended to tune in for, I'm afraid you have the wrong show.
Oh man, I'm on the wrong live stream. Nevertheless,
Doug under the name, so this has to be wrestling related.
it is a wrestling show. What is going on, Kevin?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm want to thank everyone for joining us. And if you joined us last week, I want to hopefully look a little less pixelated to you. I spent much of the show pixelated. Doug dropped out. I dropped out for a bit. Doug had a whole crash, so we had some technical issues going on.
We did indeed have some technical difficulties last week. I think we're back to our broadcast homes this week, and hopefully.
And despite that, I thought it was one of our better shows. For those of you who maybe don't catch us live every week, all of these are archived on our YouTube channel or in the video section of our Facebook where we're watching this. I thought it was a very engaging topic that we had a good discussion about race and equality in professional wrestling. So if you happen to miss it, check it out. If for no other reason than to try to figure out what it is we did, Doug, to make Vince McMahon mad.
Well, we got blocked for sure.
We had a bit of a copyright strike on us, folks. So,
well, it wasn't a strike. It's just a claim and a block. Although it's interesting where we've been blocked.
So for many fans in Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, India. It was a whole bunch of. I mean, we obviously our fan base is huge in that part of the world, but
apparently so.
Apologies to all of you watching from those areas. If you can no longer access our prior live stream, we'll try not to make Vince mad with this one, Doug.
We will try, but well, I'm going to talk a lot about Dynamite tonight, so
so enjoy it while it lasts, here, folks. We're going to get banned again. Tonight, though, our main event, we're talking about retirements in professional wrestling.
Yes, indeed, we are.
Before we can get to the main event, we have to go to the opening bell.
Do you have a sound effect?
I don't. I was hoping you'd go ding, ding, ding.
I will always go ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. The opening bell. What's up, everybody? Here we go. What's in the news, Kevin?
Well, we got some headlines here. Speaking of Vince and making Vince mad, we did. Vince had the quarterly financial report that he gives to investors. And during that report, obviously, the coronavirus was a big part of what they were discussing. And the possibility that Florida may no longer be a viable place for them to host their wrestling events. As you know, most of you should know, almost all pro wrestling you see, AEW and WWE's programming is emanating from the state of Florida. The state of Florida is very much a hot spot now with coronavirus cases. So looking ahead, Vince knowing that there's a possibility they may not be able to do the shows in the future, he promised investors that there is a plan B. He did not say what the plan B was, but that they do have a plan B in case they're no longer able to produce television in the state of Florida. Related to that, though, is if you have not heard, there is a good chance, plan B or otherwise, SummerSlam, the second biggest pay-per-view of the year for WWE, which was originally scheduled to take place in Boston, and only within the last 2 weeks was officially canceled for not being able to happen in Boston, does not look like it's going to be happening at the Performance Center either. If rumors are to be believed, and of course we'll stay on top of it here, we'll have our preview show coming up in a couple of Sundays. Doug, have you heard where we may be heading?
Where are we heading, Kevin? Where are we heading?
Well, the Jericho cruise this year may be canceled, folks, but if you want to see your professional wrestling from a cruise ship, I'm taking it, Doug. That's the first you heard that one?
Man, really?
We may be having SummerSlam from a cruise ship.
Yep, because absolutely. Cruise ships are incredibly safe in the time of coronavirus. Oh my! What is wrong with this crazy old man?
Let's lock everybody up in a small area. Let's feed them all buffet style, and let's go out to international waters where someone can't shut us down. What's the worst thing that can happen, right?
So now suddenly I'm seeing these visions. You remember the Simpsons episode where they go out to international waters and have the monkey knife fights? That's Suddenly, that's what I'm seeing as SummerSlam. Of course, they do have all that pirate theme garbage from their wasted WrestleMania. So if they're out on a boat, maybe they could recycle it.
And Dana White and UFC, Doug, did have Fight Island. They did get themselves an island and hosted the fights from there. So it's what is being proposed is not unprecedented, and in these unprecedented times, anything at this point wouldn't surprise. I do have one more coronavirus thing related, though, to the call I was telling you about with the investors. The investors were very nervous about the huge dip that we've seen in ratings.
Mhm.
And of course, Vince McMahon was quick to blame the fact that the pandemic has kept them from playing in front of crowds, and crowds are a big part of the experience. And he believes that is the reason that ratings are so down. Of course, ratings are down for everyone in wrestling, AEW, all of them. But AEW and NXT have not been as adversely affected as Raw and SmackDown. So you could look at that a couple of ways. Is it because the mainstream shows are taking the biggest hit, or is it because AEW and NXT have been consistently more engaging content, and Vince is just blaming sinking ratings on the pandemic?
I'm going with NXT and especially AEW have been superior products to the main roster over the past, oh God, I don't even know how long at this point, because it's a struggle to get through WWE programming other than NXT at this point for me. I don't know about anybody else who's watching, but it's
In a related story, Major League Baseball returned about a week and a half ago, and people were so eager for a baseball game, even though those are being held in front of no audiences, that the first couple of games were the highest highest ratings that regular season baseball has received in more than 10 years. So using the no audience thing as an excuse may be a bit of a stretch. And in fact, the NBA is now back this week. And both of those things are important because anecdotally, anyways, there is some thought that people who normally wouldn't be tuning into wrestling might have been watching wrestling out of the fact that there were no other live sports actually producing content. Now that sports are coming back, actual sports are coming back, it's going to be interesting, Doug, and we will keep an eye, but those ratings may not have hit the low watermark just yet. Now that there's going to be competition again, it may get worse before it gets any better at all.
And traditionally doesn't, especially Monday Night Raw, don't they traditionally have a ratings dip anyway when they're dealing with Monday Night Football? I mean, people do go to football other than Raw, except like geeks like us who don't really sport. But I know you sport when it comes to baseball, but
football, it's not football season yet, but they have a plan in place. So that'll be, if all goes according to their plans, that'll be even more competition that might sink those ratings even further south. So it's definitely something to watch as ratings truly are in a free fall. And obviously investors are taking note. Some of the other things, Doug, I had were just kind of some coming and goings. If I can run through a couple of things. As you've talked about and we've talked about a few times, it's been anticipated, but this past Monday night on Raw, if you missed it, Kairi Sane, folks, had her final farewell. She was written off as part of a storyline attacked by Banks and Bailey, but she's going back home to Japan to be with family, and it's kind of been presumed for a while that she would be leaving. But I really am going to miss Kairi, Doug. I don't know about you, but I was a big fan.
I was a big fan. An interesting side note, I was reading an article earlier today that Kairi Sane and Kenny Omega are incredibly good friends. And in an interview several months ago when they were talking about the women's division, because Kenny has a big say and a lot of stroke in the women's division, he was asked who he would want out of any roster, and she was at the top of his list. Of course, he did go on to say at that point she was under contract and they couldn't even have a conversation about such things like that. Now, I know her plans are to head back to Japan where her husband is, wrestle for about a year, then retire. But knowing that she is a free agent now and is very good friends and has been for quite some time with Kenny Omega, I think that's interesting to what we could see in the women's division in AEW.
If she does, though, leave the scene completely, it is wrestling's loss, because she was a good performer and a incredibly entertaining character as well. So I'm definitely going to miss my chances of seeing her. we have a few other, like I know last week, Doug, we talked a lot about all the comings into Impact. There was a ton of folks that debuted at Slammiversary or the show right after that. This week, AEW took their swing, and
They
we had
did
former
indeed.
Zack Ryder, who is obviously an internet favorite. I say former Zack Ryder. I can't remember what name he's going by now.
He's going by his name, Matt Cardona. Cardona. That's it.
I
Yeah.
couldn't remember the last name.
Strong Island. Yeah.
He always was popular with the fans, always over, never really got a push in the WWE. Now he's got a chance to reset that in the AEW. He wasn't so much a surprise as much as where he was going to land as the fact that he debuted this past week. But a bigger surprise for me on AEW was to see Ariana. And for folks who haven't been watching wrestling for a very long time, Ariana kind of came to fame as the original tag team partner for Naomi. Her name at the time was Cameron in WWE, and she might even more so than that tag team might have been best known for her stint on the reality series Total Divas, where she and her boyfriend were very prominently featured. So yeah, she showed up on AEW.
And let's not forget, I think her WWE debut was within the Stone Cold Steve Austin hosted Tough Enough, one of the last seasons of Tough Enough, where she got booted after telling Stone Cold one of her favorite matches was, I think, Melina versus Alicia Fox or something like that. That was her number one match of all time. I'm pretty sure later in the show she was then swiftly eliminated.
She at the time she was known for some backstage incidents, but who knows? I mean, it's been 8 years or so. I mean, it's been a while for her. So I was very surprised to see her. I had not heard any rumblings about her in a long time being anywhere. For her to return to wrestling and to do so on the number 2 show, the number 2 promotion rather, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, we'll talk about Ariane later in the show from my perspective.
Oh, okay. Preview of the big finish. So yeah. 2 more comings and goings. So first, I will say I saw this right before we went on air just a bit ago, but congratulations are in order to the Danielsons, Brian and Bree.
Oh.
They gave birthday to a little baby boy, so congratulations to 2 WWE performers there who good people, and happy for them and the family. And then lastly, I'm saving this one as a transition because we'll see whether or not it sticks, but Rusev, who was amongst those who was let go back in all the Black Wednesday back in April, supposedly has retired, or I know he likes to work people on his social media. If he's to be believed, he is done with his wrestling days, Doug, which unless you have any other news.
I do about Rusev actually, because I know Rusev was saying that he's retired from wrestling and is going to become a Twitch streamer, and then apparently having Lana in a bikini made him too sexy for Twitch, which promptly got him banned.
So he may be forced to come back.
Exactly. No, I'm not hip to the whole Twitch scene, but from what I was reading, I guess a Twitch ban doesn't necessarily last that long. And I think he's tweeted since then that, learned his lesson, too sexy for Twitch, be back soon. So maybe it's just a little slap on the hand. So hopefully we'll see Rusev, now Miro, going by his actual name, Miro, on Fortnite streaming again soon, I guess.
I hope to see him in AEW or an Impact Ring or Ring of Honor or something. The man is too talented to have gone out the way he did without ever really getting a huge main event push. I think he's probably working us, but Doug, that is probably a great segue into what our main event topic is tonight. You want to get to it?
It is. Let's get to it. The main event.
All right. So, as you all hopefully watched, The Undertaker recently retired. And we saw all that unfold in the Undertaker: The Last Ride series, which was one of the best docuseries. Doug and I both gave thumbs up to this whole docuseries.
Absolutely.
It showed the struggle that the dead man was having with letting go. That every year, that pull for just one more match, or having a match not end the way you want it to, and therefore you keep seeking that one more match. And he kept doing it beyond the age of when it was conceivable for him to have the kind of performances that he wanted. It really goes to show how tough it is for some of these folks to walk away. We thought this would be a good framing point. This, if you've watched The Undertaker and watched him struggle with it, why is it so hard for some of these guys to say the final goodbye? Doug, wrestling isn't like my job, your job, where, hopefully one day, whatever we're working at the time, when we reach retirement age, we get a gold watch, we walk away. That's not the way it happens in professional wrestling.
That is indeed not the way it happens. I've seen, guys transition and have a really hard time, especially a lot of the legends seem to have a very hard time transitioning. And I don't know if it's harder for these guys because they're the guys on top. They want that blaze of glory to go out with that major W and then walk away, but they just can't walk away because maybe there's something else, one more thing they have to do. But then it seems like others have been able to successfully walk away. But I mean, we've had this conversation before. What is it? What gets people stuck? Is it the love of the game? Is it the money? What is it?
And it probably is a good thing to point out that it oftentimes has to do with what type of retirement we're talking about. You and I are going to hopefully retire one day when we reach retirement age, but there are several types of retirements in professional wrestling. One, if I'm thinking back to a kid and the first retirements I can remember, they were not retirements. There's the storyline retirement. That's not what we're here talking about.
The Loser Leaves Town match.
Yeah. Yes. And then like 2 months later, he shows back up in a mask and everyone knows it's him, but you can't prove it because he's got a mask on. And, that's what I used to think of as wrestling retirements. But then there's the medical retirement, which used to be the retirement you didn't come back from. And we can all think of the heartfelt speeches we've seen on television over the years of, Shawn Michaels saying goodbye, or Paige having to retire at a very young age of 25 or what have you. But Doug, even that's not so long forever anymore. Daniel Bryan really kind of set the tone for the fact that there can be a comeback even after a medical retirement.
But Daniel Bryan and Edge both, which are two guys on my list of, I broke a list down, and we'll get into this a little bit later because, like I say, what does it come back around to, regardless of why the individual's retired, is it that love of the game? Is it the money? What is it that keeps pulling these people back?
With your Daniel Bryans and your Edges, I mean, that's the kind of thing that would give hope to someone like a Paige who
exactly.
at 25 may not actually be done, because that used to be, that was the deal. Like if you were medically unable to participate, you were done. But even that's not a deal breaker anymore. But it's the really likelihood of coming back from that is still more of a long shot than the category that we're really focusing on tonight. And that is when it is your actual decision and it's not made for you. Why is that so hard to walk away? And like you said, it does appear that it's the legends that have the hardest time. And I think that there's a reason why. I mean, it's like rock and roll, right? Like how many farewell tours have Kiss and the Who have collectively? Like it's a joke, right? So you look at wrestling legends, Terry Funk, the man wrestled into his late 70s, right? He started in 65. His first retirement was 1983.
Yeah.
And the last Doug I saw, and maybe you've seen something, that said otherwise. I tried to find out how many times he retired. No one knows. That's how big of a joke it became. And then the last match he had was 2017. So 3 years ago, the man would be like 74, 75 at that point. He's like 80 now, I think, or approaching it. He is really the poster boy, I think, for, don't ever believe a professional wrestler when they say that they are retiring. He's far alone. He's far from being alone too, as far as the senior set goes, Doug. I mean, think about all the guys in their 60s that are still doing shows.
Well, and it's not what I think about. Like, we've got the Rock and Roll Express still out there.
Jerry Lawler.
Vince
won't let him on TV because of like fear.
He doesn't want to have a heart attack. You're right. But I mean, and even beyond that, you look at guys, who maybe they're not wrestling, but they're still heavily involved in the business, because AEW has done an excellent job of putting people to work like Arn, Tully, Jake Snake. They have on-air roles. They're not in the ring, thank God, because I fear for their safety. especially if you put him up against a Brian Cage or Darby Allin, or or even John Moxley on a suicide run. But these guys are still out there, in the business.
I think that is a key, though, to what actually makes for a successful transition from out of the ring.
Yes.
If you're still involved in the business and you still feel relevant, whether it's on air or not, the backstage area is full at WWE, Impact, all of them. Most of the agents and the behind the scene guys, your Dean Malenkos, your Devons, your Bubba Rays, your
Impact. Excellent example is that we have Chris Sabin, who is a producer for Impact. Alex Shelley walked away from the business years ago, but who opened Impact Slammiversary? Motor City Machine Guns.
Well, that's true. That didn't keep them out of the ring just because they had backstage.
Right.
But, these guys that don't stay involved some way in the business, it's if you saw the movie The Wrestler, and it was one of the things I wanted to bring up, because I think that really is the perfect example of the two reasons that guys keep going. And sometimes those reasons are combined, and sometimes it's one or the other. It's usually a combination of money or the missing of that spotlight. Oftentimes it's both.
Yes.
Because, like, I'll use Jerry Lawler as another example. Like, I know I mentioned him earlier as a man that was in his 60s. I'm friends, or was friends, with some folks that ran a local promotion out of Southern Ohio, and they brought in Jerry Lawler one time. And I had done some interviewing with them, for a story I was writing about, their promotion, and just talking to my buddy about, the Lawler appearance and how they made it happen. So that he was going to make, and again, this was at like an armory or a high school gym, which is oftentimes where you see some of these legends with a bunch of local guys, and then there's like one big star on the card, right? And in the case of Jerry Lawler, he had his expenses paid, so they flew him here, they arranged to pick him up and get him back to the airport, and they gave him $5,000. And he tag teamed with somebody, so he didn't even have to do a whole lot of work. People just would pay money to see Jerry Lawler. Sure. And at the end of the night, probably even made more money than that selling merchandise to them. So it was an easy payday for him. All expenses paid, $5,000 for 15 minutes of work, where half the time your partner's doing the heavy lifting. So there's definitely a financial incentive. I can't imagine that they even made, in local Southern Ohio promotion, wrestling at an armory. I doubt they even made $5,000. They probably took 2 or 3 shows worth of money and invested it into getting Jerry Lawler on one of their cards.
Absolutely. And here's the thing about that, circling back around to talking about a normal retirement, neither one of us are going to get called back to work after we retire for 15 minutes of work and get paid $5,000 for it. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
And that's the thing that ties into the, it's either the financial need and you have to keep going, or it's the spotlight. Because once you have a name in wrestling, you always have that name. And that is what you hang your hat on. If it was a competitive sport, I know we talked about the NBA and MLB earlier, Father Time tells you when it's done. But Jerry Lawler can keep winning at 62 as long as it's in the script for Jerry Lawler to win at 62. A baseball player is going to go out on his shield because when he's done, they're going to send him out. There's someone younger to take his place because they're trying to win games. When there's wins and losses don't count and people just want to see you. That is why, Doug, it's the legends. I think when you mentioned why is it the legends, that's why I think it's the legends, because some of the guys that maybe never rise above the mid card don't have that name value. They can't live off that name. Jerry Lawler can, 20 years from now, if he's still alive and kicking, somebody's going to pay, $20 to get into their local high school gym just to say they met Jerry Lawler.
Well, sure. But what about folks like Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, those two in particular I think about, because, maybe it's a favorite of Vince, maybe it's, maybe it's just craving that spotlight to get one more time, to get that rush, to get those, 20,000, 80,000, whatever it may be, people standing screaming your name one last time. Maybe it's like a drug too for people at that
Yes.
top tier, because I don't think Taker is ever going to be a guy. Mark is never going to be going to like the county fair and taking the $5,000. He's not going to be that guy, especially with his very lucrative Legends contract that he has now with WWE. But yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's going to need that. But just watching the Undertaker series, the last ride, I don't think that's the last ride. I think we'll see him again here and there. And I think a way to do that for him is like in the Boneyard match, where he can clearly get over, not like where we have him and someone like Goldberg in Saudi Arabia. We don't want to see that. But
Mickey Rourke and the wrestler played a broke down professional wrestler. That's the kind of guy who's doing it because they, one, are addicted to it, and two, they can't do anything else. Obviously, Mark Calloway and HBK do not need the money. I doubt that Jerry Lawler needs the money. Maybe the Rock and Roll Express, those kind of guys do. The reason I differentiated between there's some that are either financial or fame, or a combination of the two. Doug, when you and I were becoming fans in the 70s and 80s, it was different than today. Those guys didn't make as much money.
Sure.
And today, as part of the WWE development system, and I would hope AEW and others do something similar, they actually send these folks to life classes and do financial management training and things for them. The old school guys, even if you were on top, most of these guys, even though we saw them on TV, they weren't making there wasn't like, merchandise deals and all these other streams of income that they have nowadays. These guys today make a lot more, and the guys we grew up watching spent a lot more. They were not very good with their money. Those guys ended up in situations where they have to keep wrestling. Whether their bodies say they should or could, they've got to keep going. Someone like HBK, someone like the Undertaker, for the Undertaker, if you watch the series, it's obvious the legacy is what was getting him. That I don't want to be seen like that. He seemed so satisfied with that Boneyard match. Like you said, that's a way that he could do it without it having to be live in front of a crowd. And, you could do 5 takes to get it to where it looks great. And he could still, for that action sequence, which was basically a movie and not a match, he looks like the Undertaker again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the way to get a lot more miles, no pun intended with the last ride and all that, but a lot more miles out of somebody like the Undertaker. But as we discussed before, I love Boneyard. I love the Funhouse. Cinematic wrestling has gone dramatically downhill since WrestleMania. And is grossly overused, but that's a way to get more miles out of somebody like the Undertaker. And I really think for folks like the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, especially, I keep coming back to those two guys. I think there is something just wired into them, into their psyche. Shawn had his a well-documented history of issues, and I think he had to step away from the business to find himself and get his head on right. Get to a place where he was comfortable before he ever came back to the business. But
Shawn Michaels was one, though. I was honestly surprised. I don't think he was worried about his legacy the way that the Undertaker was. He was one man that seemed comfortable to walk away, and he stayed away. And everybody, young star that would come up, would call him out on social media because they wanted that Shawn Michaels match at WrestleMania, and they thought they could entice him back, and he was not enticed. It truly, for him, I believe, was some 6-figure offer for the Saudi Arabian money that brought him back. He seemed to be the one guy that was a legend that was not interested in the fame part of it. I just think that it was such a ridiculous amount of money that he couldn't say no to it. And I think it was 9 years for him that he was, 9 years before he came back. And after he saw the match, he probably wished he wouldn't have taken the money because, obviously he's a legend no matter what. But it is a stain at the end. He's not going out on top like he would have had he managed to keep that WrestleMania match as his actual retirement instead of that. Well, I'll take the money, and then you get in there with a bunch of other old guys who also are part timers or are just coming back, and it was a train wreck. It was not
It
pretty.
was a train wreck.
It
And
was a
it,
train wreck.
circle around to like the medical retirements you're talking about too. Edge and Daniel Bryan come from foremost to my head as these two guys, especially Daniel Bryan, forced, well, and Edge too. I mean, both forced into retirement, but through the miracles of modern medicine, have an opportunity to, again, like you're saying with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, go out on their own terms and uh pick pick their spot basically to go, this is how I'm going out, this is the legacy I want to leave. Edge unfortunately comes back in the time of coronavirus, and I think Daniel Bryan's never really been able to hit that again, or like that pre-retirement. I mean, Bryan is great, do not get me wrong, but I don't know if storyline wise or push wise he's ever been able to circle back around to where he was.
I did like when he was the environmental champion going around with his wooden belt. I really got a kick out of that. And he has had some great matches, but at this point, I think that he's one who's happy to be back and still has that wrestling addiction. But between his now 2 children, he's obviously a guy who would much rather spend time at home when he can. And so the idea of being on top doesn't interest him so much anymore. I think that dude would actually be fine wrestling in Southern Ohio armories.
I agree too. I think he's even happier in those, and I'm sure he loves the Performance Center right now because that's where he came from.
Yeah, he actually said that he might be the one guy who is not, that bothered by the lack of crowds. He joked that the size of the crowd at the Performance Center is relatively large compared to the crowd that watched most of his matches through his indie career. So that dude is truly addicted to professional wrestling, but I don't think he has to find himself as the world champion. He's done all that. He would be happy wrestling in your local gym if it meant he got to exercise his wrestling addiction while being a happy father at home. He's made his money, and obviously he's been smart with his money. Doug, we've talked money and fame. I think if we talk money and fame and retirements, it would be remiss to not show where both of those things are epically intertwined with the reason it was so hard for the man that you chose as our cover subject for our thumbnail for this episode, Ric Flair, the greatest wrestler of all time. Wrestled into, how old was Rick when he finally stepped away, Doug? I mean, 70s?
Which time? I mean,
he couldn't he couldn't hold on to his money, so he did need to work.
Yes.
But 2, if you all watched the ESPN 30 for 30 special that they did on Rick, where he got as real as I ever saw him get, he admitted what a bad father, husband, everything he was because of his addiction to being the nature boy. Not Richard Fleer, but the real man lost a long time ago. And I think that points to something about why it's often the legends. A lot of these guys, if you've been a character for 30, 40, 50 years, the line between you and your character becomes so razor thin that I think some of these men don't themselves know where the character ends and the man begins.
Well, isn't it JR that's always said, the best talent, you take the gimmick is you take your personality and just turn it up to 10, and I think we see that with people like The Rock, like Stone Cold, 2 individuals who I think have successfully transitioned out, even if they just do come back occasionally, it's like a one shot. They're not, all over TV competing and such. But then there's people like Flair who is the man. I mean, from top to bottom, the greatest wrestler, greatest champion, greatest. He is the GOAT without a doubt.
And the respect that he gets for being the GOAT is also something he's addicted to.
Sure.
The idea of being backstage and having the younger talent recognize that's the nature boy is something that means a lot to him, and why he cannot stay away from this business. I thought, well, I'm going to be jumping topics if I get to that about Flair, but I will say that I tried to think of somebody who actually, I think The Rock is a great example of someone who's doing it the right way. Like, he transitioned into another passion. And because of that, it probably makes it easier for him. He's not turned his back on wrestling. He's talked wrestling all the time. He talks it on his social media all the time. He's come back on occasion. He may still. He's never said that's the last I'm ever going to do.
We
It probably is,
I,
but
we will see at some WrestleMania in the future a father-daughter match.
oh yeah.
Somehow, because his oldest daughter is training at the performance center. So at some point we're going to see Rock back in a ring tagging with his daughter. At least that's how I'm fantasy booking it already. So
But he never said never, which is the
right.
smartest thing to do. If you draw that line, no, this is it. I'm really walking away. You're going to be made to look like a liar, because I truly thought, I really, really thought that HBK was going to be the exception to the rule. After the first couple of years, he seemed so adamant. I thought, yeah, he must really mean it. He's going to be the one guy who says it and then does it.
Yeah.
And then the money offer got made, and he has to then eat his own words. So you're smarter to just walk away and not promise that you won't come back for a one-off or something like that, because then you don't quite look as foolish when you do.
Yeah, and I think that's something Stone Cold has deep in his mind, because he could probably do a tag match with some and have somebody do a lot of the heavy lifting for him
Sure.
and get a crazy amount of money for doing it. But I think he took his ball and went home. He has his injuries and his issues that keep him out, but he knows where he is, and he's comfortable with that. And I think his transition, much like The Rock, still in the entertainment business, still dabbles here and there with the wrestling industry, but for the most part has been able to successfully walk away.
But you're right. He actually looks better in some ways than he did at the end of his WWE run.
Yeah.
I have no doubt he could be in a tag match, come out, make the hot tag, give a stunner, and the crowd will go nuts, and he'd walk away with a bunch of money. But he seems right now, at least, intent on.
At least you're right.
Yeah. And the other person I could think of, Doug, and it's kind of for a different reason, but when I started thinking like who actually walked away and stayed away, CM Punk.
CM Punk.
He still had a lot of money to be made, left a lot of money on the table, hot property. AEW would love to have him. A lot of folks would love to have him. He did get disenchanted with the wrestling industry. His new passion didn't exactly work out for him when he went away and tried to be a mixed martial artist. But true to his word, he's not come back. And I think if there's anyone still out there who may actually hold to that, he might be the one who you'd have to put up high on your list as someone who might actually follow through on walking away and staying away.
And let's not forget about his wife, AJ Lee. She also walked away basically right behind Punk and never gave it a second thought. So
I mean, it would be surprising if 5-10 years down the road you see them there. But these are folks, though, that are more of the generation that retired when there was still money in the business, that they could, if they were smart, live on that and not need to take the money. Because, like I said, I wanted to talk a bit about like what you thought were some of the better retirements of all time. And I think we probably are both going to be in agreement on what the greatest retirement match was of all time.
That's something I hadn't even thought about a retirement match. My goodness. That is a road I never even went down. I was approaching this more from, who's done it successfully and just trying to delve into the psychology. I did not even think about retirement matches, although
I love you. I'm sorry.
I love you. That's what I was going to say. That's got to be it.
I mean, that is the most beautiful ending to a wrestling career that you could ever hope for. That whole weekend on the WrestleMania stage, you're the greatest of all time. And you, for a brief 25 minutes, recapture that old Ric Flair because you're working with one of the greatest of all time in Shawn Michaels, who legitimately does love you. He delivers that line right before he delivers a super kick, and the man goes out in tears. I mean, it was perfect. The next night, the celebration, the Hall of Fame that weekend. I mean, all of that was perfect for an ending for Ric Flair, except, Doug, it wasn't the ending for Ric Flair.
It wasn't.
And you tarnished that beautiful moment by going to TNA, and I mean, not getting involved in TNA, that's fine. Nothing against TNA, but getting back in the ring when he got that, that high plateau that no one thought he could get to again, he couldn't walk away. Mick Foley did the same thing. Mick Foley had a really great farewell. his
Mhm.
actual retirement and retirement match and all of that was fantastic. And he went to TNA
You
and
know,
got
I
in the
I
ring again.
I completely forgot about Mick going to TNA. Completely forgot he retired, then went to TNA.
For the
Man,
for the
yeah.
sake of the moment, and to me, I'm not just trying to fool myself here, but Ric Flair retired at that WrestleMania. Like those
Mhm.
couple of things that happened afterwards, I've looked at as just the TNA stuff where he got in the ring and cut himself just because he could still bleed like no one else. I
Yep.
mean, all that to me was just so sad that I don't think about that as being an extension of his career. Ric Flair retired at that WrestleMania that Vince McMahon gave him because Vince knew it was time and pretty much told him you're going out because you're never going to make that decision on your own. And then
Mhm.
once Vince got out of the WWE hemisphere and on his own, he started making those decisions to get back into the ring again. But
Yeah.
I think to me, that's when Ric Flair retired. That farewell that Mick had, to me, that's his retirement. The one-off aside in Saudi Arabia, the least that we can think about that, the better. The match that Shawn Michaels had at WrestleMania, being retired by The Undertaker, I think also has to rank up there as one of the greatest retirements of all time because it was a retirement match. It was storyline like Rick's, but it also was intended at least
Right.
to be the actual real deal as well from legends we all knew were walking away. And as such, I thought that made both of those doubly powerful. And so it was kind of a shame that both men did get back into the ring after those times. Those were some of the best that I ever saw.
Yeah. I just really had never even thought about coming from the actual match perspective, but yeah.
And I was going to bring it back around because I know we started with the Undertaker as the sort of the framing reference for the struggle to say goodbye. But I think you've already given your opinion on whether or not you think that he is actually this time actually means it. You don't think I mean, you think
You
he's
know,
coming back.
at this point, I don't think anybody actually means it. I think for some guys, it really is going to be for the money. Because I mean, you think way back when Lesnar walked away, there was that Lesnar Goldberg match or WrestleMania, whatever it was, where they stunk up the place. Both of them were on their way out, and Lesnar went on to football and MMA. Years later, Lesnar comes back.
You
Years
know, Doug,
later, Goldberg comes back.
I think that Lesnar is probably the better one to bring up
Better
there.
put his shirt on.
It 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 brings to mind that what I said about CM Punk, as adamant as I think he is, never say never, right? Because
Right.
Lesnar is a good analogy in a man that was not just walking away because of I'm done and my legacy. He walked away disenchanted and with the whole wrestling business, like he couldn't give less of a crap about the wrestling business, and yet he still took the money to come back. So as
Sure.
angry as CM Punk is, and as much as he rails against the WWE system and Vince McMahon in general and professional wrestling, like he acts like he doesn't watch any of it and doesn't care about it anymore. Even if Lesnar could come back, Punk could come back.
Yeah, I mean, you never say never in this business. Like, I mean, these guys own that they are carnies. The scam is on us marks, and we are marks. I mean, my God, we do a show every Sunday night and talk about wrestling for an hour.
We should
Yeah,
like and follow this show.
yes, absolutely. Like and follow,
I'm
share
with
with your friends.
the
You know,
Undertaker. I don't think that I don't think that he's going to ever be the once a year WrestleMania attraction that he once was. But coming back for special occasions or getting in the ring to do some sort of cinematic fight like we saw with the Boneyard, I think that there will be something that'll get pitched to him that he will go and turn to his wife and go, Michelle, this I I won't get hurt. It won't take but a day's worth of filming, and I'll be right back home with you and the girls this evening. And with a couple 100,000 in my pocket, he will. He loves it too much to. I think that the struggle we saw in the docu series, it made a great ending to the docu series to say that he walked away. But of
hmm
course, as with all of the examples we've given tonight, Doug, it is time that ultimately tells the tale as to whether or not they're legit or
right.
not. And we've not really seen anyone that's managed to stay legit and stay away when they said they were going to stay away.
And I think with the cinematic wrestling, it's already proven we can get more years out of the Undertaker. And we I'm calling it right now. We will see a Fiend versus Undertaker cinematic something in the future.
You think this next WrestleMania? You think he sits this one out?
I think he sits this one out. He sets
Okay.
this one out, and he comes back though. We eventually see Fiend v Undertaker in something similar to a boneyard.
So, folks, unless it's the doctors that say you absolutely can't, and then no miracle or medical, advancements work in your favor, don't ever believe any of your professional wrestlers, and don't ever give up hope on any of your professional wrestlers that maybe even have walked away because of injury, because history has shown that it is hard to stay away. And if these men and women can find their way back into a professional wrestling ring, whether it be for fame, money, one more shot at being in front of you guys on camera, they will do it.
This is so true. I mean, they're carnies, man. They're conning us. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. They're just like Marvel directors. They're going to lie to us.
Undertaker's coming back, folks. As if you didn't probably think that was the case. We're calling it early. Doug says not this WrestleMania, but one down the road, you're going to see Fiend Undertaker.
Yes.
So make sure you come back and comment on this video in a couple of years and let Doug know he was
right. Brother, are we ready to wrap the show up?
Let's get to the finish, Doug.
Let's do it. Big finishes.
Big finishes. Let's talk embarrassment of the week. For me, I'll just be quick because there wasn't anything for me anyway that was so terribly egregious this week that really got my goat. There was nothing horrible as far as angles. There was no embarrassing matches that, the closest thing I had to make sure I had something for this is that on SmackDown this Friday night, we saw Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy, of course, has been wrapped up for the last month and a half with Sheamus in this horrible angle that was centered around his true life addiction and alcoholism. And when he finally won that match on SmackDown a couple weeks ago, finally got his comeuppance, the good guy come out on top like he should have done, of course. I was hoping it was the end of the whole using his demons against him, but he was out on Friday night and Baron Corbin comes back out to the ring. And next thing you know, he's talking 12 steps and all that. So the fact that apparently they're going to keep using, the real life troubles of Jeff Hardy in angles that involve Jeff Hardy, that was my embarrassment of the week.
So it's funny you mentioned Corbin because I too, like you, this week actually struggled finding something where it's just like, oh God, how do I explain this to my non-wrestling friends? But that really wasn't anything really that bad. I was real close to saying anything with Baron Corbin involved in it, but AEW, man. AEW. I'm not sure what Tony Khan's thinking. At least he's trying to get marks like me riled up by, bringing in Ariane. I don't get that. I don't get why they're bringing the bomb.com girl and then sticking her with Nyla Rose. I don't understand what's going on, but I don't like it.
You kind of tipped your head earlier as soon as you like, well, it can't be good because, she never distinguished herself. Naomi was fantastic in the ring. Cameron or Ariane, she never really stood out as having the same type of athletic potential. She isn't the name, it's not like you're bringing in, a big name individual that fans are going to remember and rally behind. It is a curious move by AEW, particularly at this time when so many performers are out there that have lost their jobs or looking for work that still have something in the tank. That was a kind of a shocking signage to me.
I don't get it, but most of this female tag team tournament is happening on YouTube anyway, which I'm not sure about. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that. If they're going to go, I think they should go all in. Again, no pun intended, but push their women's division. But maybe I have faith that there's something bigger coming out of it. But come on, Ariane, of all the people, bring back Piper's daughter if you're going to do this. Ariane.
Dynamite Doug having an embarrassment of the week come from AEW.
From AEW.
Wonders never cease.
So
match of the week.
So here's the thing, man.
Uh-oh.
I have to agree. This circles back to what you were talking about last week. Cody and what he does with the TNT title is amazing week after week. I am not a stranger to Warhorse. I've seen a lot of the dude's stuff on YouTube. So he's going to be a bit much for some people, but I really, really love the Cody Warhorse. I think that TNA or wow TNT. I did. I'll put a JR there. That TNT title that comes up every week is the TV title, like you said before, but that title is showcasing so much great talent, so much unique talent. You know, from Ricky Starks to Eddie Kingston, who is now All Elite,
Yep.
and now we've got Warhorse. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything about him being All Elite yet, but from Warhorse, you showcasing such unique talent over and over. I'm really loving what Cody and all of Dynamite. I know everybody's shocked from that for me to say that, but that's my match of the week. That Warhorse Cody match, and kudos to Taz for totally filling in for Excalibur during his time off.
I forgot to mention that as far as
Yeah,
comings and goings, the fact that one, the coming is Eddie Kingston. Thank goodness getting that contract for that
absolutely.
killer promo that he cut
Mm.
last week. And Doug is correct, folks. I should have mentioned this in the news section and it intended to, but Excalibur is under what we believe to be a suspension. For some previous comments he had made at another event years ago that had resurfaced. And, right now we're in an era of accountability. And so, they're showing that they're, going to keep that company line of if something comes to light that is unsavorable, you will be punished for. And it appears that Excalibur, as talented as he is being punished. But I don't really, I like the guy on commentary, but man, Taz is so good. I can't say that I missed anything from my commentary on AEW on Wednesday night. Taz is excellent.
Taz was great, especially in that Warhorse Cody match. I mean, putting over Warhorse, putting over. Yeah, I mean, Taz is just great in that role, just like Jericho's really great in that role. But
I'm
that
glad. I'm sorry. I'm glad you brought up the Warhorse Cody match, and I know last week I gave my performer of the week to Cody because of what he's doing with that title. Since that time, I actually saw an interview, Doug, with Cody where he was talking about what we talked about last week, using that executive role / performer role to showcase not just the title. And we didn't really mention this specifically, but he was talking about one thing he was wanting to do is to show a national audience and acknowledge what WWE doesn't, and that there is a broader wrestling world beyond AEW and
Mhm.
what we know of in WWE. So his idea is not just to defend it every week and to put over younger talent. That could be younger AEW talent or folks they have signed. He's basically giving on air tryouts to these guys and showing the
Mhm.
wrestling world that, hey, we exist as part of a larger, there's wrestling beyond just this federation and this channel. And we are okay and confident enough to show you that that other world exists by talking about their histories and what they've done elsewhere and then bringing them out and giving them a national stage. What he's doing right now is just incredible. And I can't wait week to week to see, who's facing Cody this week. It's become one of my favorite things on my
Absolutely.
weekly wrestling calendar. This
Absolutely.
week, I will give, though, my match of the week, though, to the other show on Wednesday night. I could not find anything wrong with the match that Johnny Gargano and Roderick
Mm.
Strong had.
Fair enough.
Obviously,
Absolutely.
you put those two in the ring 10 out of 10 times, they're going to have one of the greatest matches of any given week that it would occur in. So it's not really a surprise. I won't elaborate much on it beyond that, other than to say, if you didn't see it, folks, definitely check out two of the best in the business doing what they do, and that's putting on an incredible, technically sound, very believable looking professional wrestling contest.
Absolutely. So, performer of the week. I wonder if we're going to intersect here.
I'm going to say I would be surprised, to be honest.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead and go there. You go.
Okay, my performer of the week is the North.
Oh, okay.
So I'm afraid, because I can do it too, it is easy to sleep on Impact Wrestling because for so long it was so bad. But folks, if you're still sleeping on Impact Wrestling, you're missing one of the greatest wrestling shows currently on air. They have, I think, the most competitive women's division. I think they have one of the absolute best tag team divisions. And they're just doing some very interesting things right now, and are bringing in some very valuable talent and signings to their roster. The North, if you're not familiar with them, Ethan Page and oh shoot, I forgot Ethan's partner. But anyway, they were the tag team champions. They recently lost the last week on TV. They lost the tag team titles to a returning Motor City Machine Guns, who are one of the greatest tag teams of all time, in my opinion. But the North themselves had held those titles and had some very good matches with everyone from the Chris brothers to TJP and Fallah Bahh to the Good Brothers. To, I mean, they had faced the Rascals, who I think are one of the absolute greatest tag teams, young tag teams, and up and coming tag teams in the world today. The North have held those belts for more than a calendar year. So essentially, they did exactly what Adam Cole did with the NXT title. They just did it kind of tucked away in Impact, and therefore it wasn't as noticed that the accomplishment that they had. So I wanted to give my shout out, my performer to the week, to the North, who have been consistently entertaining and have put on some great matches and held the World Tag Team titles for more than a year in Impact Wrestling, and I wanted to make note of that.
Well played, sir. So we'll get back to talking about AEW Dynamite now. My performer of the week.
Go ahead.
MJF. Come on. How is that promo? I mean, the kid is golden. He is a future Hall of Famer. And wherever he goes in his future, I mean, I still think it's 30 years from now, we're going to hear stories just like we hear about The Undertaker now, where he's in character all the time about how MJF is a really nice guy, is a really cool guy backstage and all that. But, that persona that is the uber heel of MJF was on full display. He cut a promo that was, straight off out of a Jim Cornette podcast, just tearing down everything about AEW and the indie ridiculousness that he sees and all of it. It was such a heel promo for an AEW audience. I loved it. I thought it was great.
How long do you think, Doug, they can hold off before we see MJF versus Jon Moxley?
Man, I don't know. I am really wondering. I mean,
I do love the build. I mean, I think that he is just, like you said, such a hot property to still be so young, to already be so good at what he does.
Absolutely.
I just wonder how long they can keep him out of the main event scene and have him as an up and coming instead of the man, because he will one day be the man. There is no doubt about it in my book either. And good call, because that promo was really entertaining.
Right. I mean, it did get a little theatric with and very WWE like with the podium and the people that we don't know surrounding him and everything, other than Wardlow as the bodyguard and the press person. But he's cutting old skill. Yeah, smile, honey. You look prettier when you smile. Just all of this, just pure heel, oozing it, an old school heel too. And
he doesn't get cheered. Like, he's not the cool heel that you cheer because of the cool things. He gets actual heel heat, which is so hard to do.
Legit heel heat, absolutely.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, great heel, great promo. Kids going places. I'm calling it. MJF going places. Undertaker not retired.
Undertaker's coming back.
You heard it here first. Exclusive Two Bros Wrestling Show.
Folks, you want to keep hearing stuff like that? Follow, subscribe. If you want that kind of insight, we want you coming back. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
Doug, next week, we're talking one of your favorites.
Were we talking Tessa next week?
We're talking Tessa next week. Folks, Tessa Blanchard, it's got the pedigree. It's got the family name. Was the first woman to hold a man's world title. Also the first woman to be stripped of a man's world title. I mean, we got controversies. Her stock is couldn't be higher, and her market, what the market and interest is, couldn't be more obscured right now because of things we'll talk about next week. So if you're a Tessa Blanchard fan, next week's the show for you. And if you're not, come learn something, because there's not a whole lot more interesting in the world of professional wrestling than Tessa Blanchard, Doug.
And honestly, the way the wrestling world changes so dramatically and so quickly right now in this time of coronavirus, we may be actually talking about Tessa's new home by next Sunday night.
If so, then we'll have a story we can tell full circle. So join us next Sunday, 8 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. I've been Doug.
And I've been Kevin.
And we've been rambling about wrestling. Oh, I like that. Rambling about wrestling.
Man, We need a new show.
Maybe we should just make that the tagline. Good night, everybody. Be nice to each other. Stay home, stay safe, do things, watch wrestling.